And to all our guests, pleasant good morning. On behalf of our chairperson, President Lucille III, welcome to the Philippines. It is with great pride and pleasure to be hosting you all today, because in just 4 days, or from 4 days ago, we saw the read a report of the first part of the 5th IPCC scientific or climate scientific report. The said report declared in unequivocal terms that the increase in temperature is extremely likely, and this is due to human activity. This further supports their call to reduce greenhouse gas emission and limit the global average temperature rise of not more than 2 degrees above the pre-industrial level, commonly now known as the threshold for dangerous climate change. We now need to be reminded what industrialization means in the first place, so we can put into context why we're all here today. Industrialization is the process in which a society or country transforms itself from a primarily agrarian community or society into one based on manufacturing of goods and services. It played a great role in the economic development of most, if not all, developed countries. This is where the Philippines seems to be heading. We are one of the fastest growing economies in the world, and even outpaced the growth of China during the first quarter of this year of GDP growth of 7.8%. We have a robust service sector and a growing industry and manufacturing sectors. But we are one of the most vulnerable to climate change based on several studies, citing our number of risks, number of people exposed to risk, validating a strong rural to urban migration. And they also says, these reports have declared that our infrastructure are generally weak to address a changing climate. Nonetheless, we will still consider this as an opportunity to start right. Therefore, if we are to gain moral authority to push for a low-emission pathway, we need to pursue economic development that involves industrialization with a conscience. We know now what developed countries did not know then with certainty. The science that confirmed almost 95% that an unsustainable development powered by depletable, dirty sources of energy is the main culprit of a warming planet. Industrialization with a conscience, therefore, is an economic development that combines climate resiliency and low-emission pathway. As we embrace the low-emission pathway or green growth, we, however, as a country, remain cautious. Why? Because we need to know whether this capacity development might result to a regulatory burden. Not to mention that it is also still primarily technology-driven for now. Technology that is mostly made outside the Philippines. If it's not made here, it will not create considerable jobs and not much added value. If it's not made here, it is generally perceived or generally more expensive. We need to look at this, however, as an opportunity to innovate locally so that we can contribute to the reduction of emission on our terms, or at least hasten technology transfer at reasonable cost. Let us truly pursue a low-emission pathway because we want to fight global warming and not just a business enterprise. With the passage of the Philippine Climate Change Act of 2009, the law signaled a reform from a fragmented social approach or sectoral approach to a coordinated national integration. It created a Climate Change Commission with a president sitting as our chair. I am the vice chairperson, and I'm also the executive director of the Secretariat to save on cost. It placed the accountability to address climate change in the highest official of the country. As the lead policy-making body of the climate change, the Commission coordinated the passage of the National Strategic Framework and created a true convergence of national priorities with key result areas founded on adaptation and mitigation measures. This framework is now translated into action plans. Our National Climate Change Action Plan has 7 thematic areas aimed towards increasing the adaptive capacities of communities while transitioning towards a climate-smart development, climate-smart industries and services, economically and environmental stability, food security, human security, knowledge and development, capacity development, sustainable energy, and water sufficiency. At the start of 2012, we piloted the integration of the thematic areas through our Ecotown approach in the local land use and development plans. It is a planning tool that conducts vulnerability and natural resource assessment before identifying adaptation and mitigation measures. Not doing vulnerability assessment means we're doing business as usual. We wanted to enhance our natural resources. Our mitigation potential has been considered encouraging. We, the Philippines, is the second producer of geothermal in the world, next to the United States, and we have very high potential in solar, wind, biomass, and ocean energy. But we consider mitigation as a function of adaptation. Opportunities of mitigation, therefore, should also translate into poverty alleviation. Most of our disasters, on the other hand, are water-related. Hence, we are pursuing a policy of mainstreaming climate change adaptation and disaster risk reduction by enhancing existing disaster risk management and incorporating climate change rainfall scenario by 2020 and 2050. While we initially prioritized our institutional responses on adaptation, we are now complying with our mandate under the Philippine Climate Change Act to formulate strategies on mitigating greenhouse gases and other anthropogenic causes of climate change. Hence, under the Low Emission Development Strategy project, we are currently formulating our mitigation framework. To ensure convergence among relevant agencies, we are capacitating ourselves through the institutionalization of greenhouse gas inventory in our public sector as a proactive approach in improving our baseline data. We are doing this while we are still also trying to understand the pros and cons of a low-emission development, taking into consideration our national circumstance, but still mindful of our position of the principle of common but differentiated responsibility. Just recently, we have concluded our climate public expenditure review. The review showed that our budget for climate change has increased by an annual rate of 26% from 2008 to 2012. But the strongest typhoons also occurred starting from 2008 to 2012. Most of the expenditures, however, are on flood control, taking the lion's share at 52%. We're still very much under action on our handling our climate change programs. The Climate Change Commission is now working closely with our Budget and Management Department for the first ever screening guidelines for potential climate change projects. This will allow us to further define our priorities for climate appropriations and also help us determine policies that will help enable private sector participation in terms of financing. But there is more that needs to be done, especially at the level of our local government. Awareness may be high, but compliance remains low. Not because of not wanting to comply, but simply due to the lack of absorptive capacities at the local level. That is why we are embarking on enhancing local capacities and scaling up best practices. And with half of our population below the age of 30, we need to empower the youth by giving them information that will hopefully support them in addressing effects of a changing climate. Our annual national gathering of youth called the Generation Summit empowers them to rally for climate action. We urge other countries to create your own generation of future leaders. We also celebrate our Climate Change Consciousness Week every November. And this year, we are highlighting the importance of individual action towards a collective goal. The I Plan, I Act theme is intended to let individuals embrace the climate action plans as their very own. We know that there is no silver bullet in addressing climate change, and I heard my colleague Commissioner Yetsana mention that several times. It differs from country to country, but we also know the importance of doing things collectively. That is why your presence today will be most helpful in identifying barriers towards low-emission development. Let us make climate change an opportunity for Asia to show the world how to do it. The time for Asia to lead is now. Thank you for allowing the Philippines to host the second annual Asia Lens Forum, and to all our partners, thank you very much for making this happen. And to all the delegates, please enjoy the rest of your stay in our country. It is truly more fun in the Philippines. Magandang umaga po sa inyo.